The blood on her dress was still wet when Dawson Xavier found her stumbling down the dirt road outside Manassas, Colorado, clutching her side and leaving a trail of crimson drops in the dust behind her. He had been riding back from the Henderson Ranch, the late afternoon sun of June 1882, casting long shadows across the valley, when he spotted her collapsing against a fence post, her dark hair matted with sweat and dirt, her green eyes wide with terror as she looked over her shoulder at the road behind her. Dawson dismounted before his horse had fully stopped, his boots hitting the ground with purpose as he approached her. She flinched away from him, pressing herself harder against the weathered wood, and he held up both hands, keeping his distance. "Easy now," he said, his voice low and steady. "I am not going to hurt you. You are injured." "Stay away," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "He will kill you if he finds you helping me." Dawson had heard those words before. He had heard them from Mary Patterson 2 years ago when she had shown up at his door with a broken arm and a split lip. He had heard them from Sarah Chen when she had hidden in his barn, terrified of the merchant who claimed to own her contract. He had heard them from countless other women who had crossed his path, women fleeing from men who believed they had the right to own another human being, to control them, to hurt them. "No one should need to ask for help when they are bleeding and afraid," Dawson said firmly, taking a slow step forward. "And I have never once needed to be asked. Let me help you." The woman's legs gave out beneath her, and Dawson caught her before she hit the ground. She was lighter than he expected, her body trembling as she tried to pull away from him even as consciousness began to slip from her grasp. Up close, he could see she was young, probably no more than 23 or 24, with delicate features that were currently twisted in pain and fear. "I have got you," he said softly, lifting her carefully into his arms. "You are safe now." She passed out as he settled her across his saddle, and Dawson mounted up behind her, keeping one arm secure around her waist as he urged his horse into a steady trot toward his ranch. He lived 3 miles outside of Manassas, on a spread of land he had bought with money saved from years of working cattle drives and breaking horses. It was not much, but it was his, and more importantly, it was far enough from town that people did not ask too many questions about who came and went from his property. The ride felt longer than usual with the unconscious woman in his arms. Dawson kept checking her breathing, relieved each time he felt the slight rise and fall of her chest against his arm. The blood on her dress seemed to be coming from a wound on her left side, just below her ribs, and he pressed his bandana against it, applying pressure to slow the bleeding. By the time he reached his ranch house, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Dawson dismounted carefully, gathered the woman in his arms again, and carried her into the house. He laid her on his bed, the only real piece of furniture in his modest 2-room home besides a table, 2 chairs, and a wood stove. He worked quickly, lighting lamps and gathering supplies. Clean water from the pump outside, strips of cloth he kept for injuries, a bottle of whiskey for cleaning wounds, and a needle and thread in case she needed stitches. He had done this before, not as often as some might think, but enough times that his hands moved with practiced efficiency. Carefully, he cut away the blood-soaked fabric of her dress around the wound. It was a knife cut, clean but deep, slicing across her ribs. Someone had tried to stab her, and she had twisted away just enough to avoid a fatal blow. Dawson felt anger burn in his chest as he cleaned the wound with whiskey-soaked cloth. What kind of man did this to a woman? She woke with a gasp when he began stitching, her green eyes flying open and her hand grabbing his wrist with surprising strength. "Easy," he said again, meeting her gaze steadily. "I am closing the wound. You were stabbed." "I know," she said through gritted teeth, her fingers digging into his wrist. I was there. Despite the situation, Dawson felt the corner of his mouth twitch. She had spirit, this one. "What is your name, Amelia?" she said, then hesitated. "Amelia Keller. I am Dawson Xavier. You are at my ranch outside Manassas. You are safe here." "Nowhere is safe," Amelia said, but she released his wrist and let her hand fall to the bed. She watched him work, her jaw clenched against the pain as he finished the stitches. "He will find me." "Who?" "My husband." Dawson tied off the last stitch and began wrapping clean bandages around her torso. "Tell me what happened." Amelia was quiet for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. When she finally spoke, her voice was flat, emotionless, as if she had pushed all feeling down deep inside where it could not hurt her. "His name is Victor Keller. We have been married for 2 years. He brought me out here from Philadelphia, promised me a new life in Colorado. For the first 6 months he was kind. Then he lost money in a mining investment and everything changed." She paused and Dawson waited, continuing to wrap the bandages with gentle, steady hands. "He started drinking. Started accusing me of looking at other men, of spending too much money, of doing everything wrong. Then he started hitting me." Her voice remained flat, but Dawson saw her hands curl into fists against the quilt. "I learned to stay quiet, to make myself small, to never disagree with him. But it was never enough. Tonight he came home drunk and angry, and when I suggested he eat something before drinking more, he pulled out a knife." "So you ran," Dawson said. "So I ran." Amelia finally looked at him, her green eyes sharp despite her pain. "And he will come looking for me." Victor does not let go of what he considers his property. Dawson finished with the bandages and pulled a blanket over her, his jaw tight with controlled anger. "You are not property. You are a person, and you have every right to leave a man who hurts you. The law does not see it that way." "I do not care much about what the law says when the law is wrong." Dawson stood and moved to the wash basin, cleaning the blood from his hands. "You will stay here until you are healed. Then we will figure out where you want to go." "Just like that?" Amelia asked, suspicion heavy in her voice. "You are going to let a strange woman stay in your house, protect her from her husband, and expect nothing in return?" Dawson turned to look at her, his dark eyes serious. "I have helped women leave before. Every single time I have said the same thing. No one should need to ask for help when they are in danger. You did not ask, but I am offering anyway. I expect nothing except that you heal and stay safe." "Why?" The question came out as barely more than a whisper. "Because it is the right thing to do." Dawson dried his hands and moved back to the bedside. "And because no one helped my mother when she needed it." Amelia's expression softened slightly. "Your mother, she married a man who hurt her. She died when I was 12, falling down the stairs according to the sheriff." Dawson's voice was quiet but hard. "Except I saw the bruises on her arms that looked like fingerprints. I saw the way she flinched when my stepfather came home. I was too young and too powerless to help her then. But I am neither of those things now." They looked at each other in the lamplight, understanding passing between them without further words needed. "Thank you," Amelia finally said. "I do not know if I can ever repay you. Do not need repayment. Just focus on getting better." Dawson moved toward the door. "I will sleep in the barn tonight so you can rest proper. There is water on the table and some bread if you get hungry. I will bring you something more substantial in the morning." "You do not have to sleep in the barn," Amelia protested. "I am the one intruding on your home. You are injured and need rest. The barn is fine. I have slept in worse places." He paused at the door. "Bar this door after I leave. Do not open it unless you hear my voice." Amelia nodded, and Dawson stepped out into the night, closing the door behind him and waiting until he heard the heavy wooden bar slide into place. Only then did he allow himself to take a deep breath. looking out at the dark landscape around his ranch. Victor Keller would come. Men like that always did. Dawson would be ready. The night was quiet except for the sound of crickets and the occasional whinny from his horse in the small stable. Dawson checked on the animals, made sure everything was secure, and then climbed into the hayloft where he kept a bedroll for nights when he worked late with difficult horses. Sleep came slowly, his mind turning over the problem of Amelia Keller and what to do about the man who would inevitably come looking for her. He woke before dawn, as was his habit, and made his way back to the house. He knocked softly on the door and called out his name, waiting until he heard Amelia slide the bar back before entering. She was sitting up in bed, her face pale but determined. The bandages showed no fresh bleeding, which was a good sign. "How did you sleep?" Dawson asked, moving to the stove to start a fire for coffee and breakfast. "Better than I expected," Amelia admitted. "The pain woke me a few times, but knowing I was somewhere safe made all the difference." Dawson nodded, working efficiently to get coffee brewing and fry up eggs and bacon. "How are you feeling this morning? Sore, tired, angry?" She said the last word with particular emphasis. "I keep thinking about all the times I told myself it would get better, that if I just tried harder to be a good wife, he would stop. I wasted 2 years of my life believing I was the problem." "You were not the problem," Dawson said firmly, cracking eggs into the hot pan. "A man who hurts his wife is the problem. A man who thinks he has the right to control another person is the problem. You surviving and escaping makes you strong, not weak." Amelia was quiet for a moment, watching him cook. "You really believe that?" "I do." He plated the food and brought it to her, along with a cup of coffee. "My stepfather used to tell my mother she was worthless, that she was lucky he took her in after my father died. He said it so often she started to believe it. I will not let another woman believe lies like that if I can help it." Amelia took the plate with hands that trembled slightly, whether from weakness or emotion Dawson could not tell. "You are a good man, Dawson Xavier." "I am just a man who tries to do right when I see wrong." He got his own plate and sat in one of the chairs, giving her space. "Eat. You need your strength back." They ate in comfortable silence, and Dawson found himself studying Amelia when she was not looking. Even exhausted and injured, there was something striking about her. Not just her looks, though she was undeniably pretty with her dark hair and green eyes, but something in the way she carried herself, the intelligence in her gaze, the set of her jaw that spoke of determination that had not been beaten out of her despite 2 years of trying. After breakfast, Dawson cleaned up and then excused himself to tend to the horses and check the property. He had 3 horses besides his own riding mount, all in various stages of training. Breaking and training horses was how he made most of his living, supplemented by occasional work on neighboring ranches when they needed extra hands. He was working with a 2-year-old mare, getting her used to the saddle blanket, when he heard riders approaching. Dawson's hand moved instinctively to the revolver at his hip as he turned toward the sound. 2 riders came into view, and he relaxed slightly when he recognized them. Sheriff Tom Bradley and his deputy, James Morrison, both men Dawson had known for years. "Morning, Dawson," the sheriff called out as they reined in their horses near the corral. He was a stocky man in his 50s with a graying mustache and tired eyes that had seen too much of the worst in people. "Sheriff, deputy." Dawson kept his voice neutral. "What brings you out here?" "Looking for someone," Sheriff Bradley said, dismounting. "Woman by the name of Amelia Keller. Her husband came into town last night claiming she ran off. Said she might be hurt, might not be thinking clearly. You seen anyone matching her description?" Dawson felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his expression carefully blank. "What does she look like?" Dark hair, green eyes, about 5'4". Husband says she was wearing a blue dress. The sheriff pulled out a handkerchief and wiped his forehead. He is pretty worked up about it, says he is worried sick. I bet he is, Dawson said dryly. Did he mention why she might have run off? Says they had an argument, nothing serious, but she got upset and left. Sheriff Bradley met Dawson's eyes steadily. But I have been doing this job long enough to know when someone is not telling me the whole truth. Victor Keller has scratches on his face and what looks like defensive wounds on his hands. Made me wonder what the other side of the story might be. Dawson considered his options carefully. He had known Tom Bradley for nearly 10 years, and the man was fair if not always willing to buck the system. If a woman had come to me injured and afraid, asking for help to get away from someone who hurt her, what would you do? The sheriff sighed heavily and exchanged a look with his deputy. Legally, a wife is supposed to be with her husband, but legally does not always mean right. He was quiet for a moment, then added, I have got no cause to search your property without evidence of a crime, Dawson, and I am not inclined to go looking too hard for evidence that might not exist. Appreciated, Sheriff. But I have got to warn you, Bradley continued, his voice dropping lower. Victor Keller is not going to let this go. He has money connections. He has already talking about hiring men to search for her himself. You would be smart to be careful. I am always careful, Dawson said. The sheriff nodded slowly, then mounted his horse again. If you do happen to see anything unusual, you let me know. I would rather handle this official-like than have a situation get out of hand. Will do. After the sheriff and deputy rode away, Dawson returned to the house. Amelia was standing near the window, leaning against the wall for support, her face anxious. I heard voices. Sheriff came by looking for you, Dawson said. Your husband reported you missing. Amelia's face went pale. What did you tell him? Nothing. And the sheriff is not interested in pushing too hard to find you. Dawson moved to help her back to the bed. But he warned me that your husband is planning to hire men to search. We need to think about what comes next. I do not have anywhere to go, Amelia said quietly, sitting down heavily. My family is back in Philadelphia, and they would just send me back to Victor. They arranged the marriage in the first place. You have family that would send you back to a man who stabbed you. Dawson could not keep the anger out of his voice. They do not know about that part, and if I told them, they would probably say I drove him to it. Amelia's laugh was bitter. My father believes a woman's place is supporting her husband no matter what. My mother believes the same thing because that is what she was taught to believe. Dawson sat down in the chair across from her, thinking. I know some people in Denver. Good people who help women start over, find work, get settled in new lives. It is about 100 miles from here, far enough that your husband would have a hard time tracking you, especially if you changed your name. 100 miles while I am healing from a stab wound, Amelia said, but there was hope in her voice despite the practical concern. We will wait until you are stronger. A week, maybe 2. Give you time to heal enough for the journey. Dawson leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. In the meantime, you stay here out of sight. I will handle any visitors. You are risking a lot for someone you do not even know, Amelia said softly. Maybe. Dawson met her eyes. Or maybe I am just doing what anyone decent should do. The next several days fell into a pattern. Dawson would wake early, check to make sure the property was secure, and then make breakfast for both of them. Amelia's strength was returning gradually, the color coming back to her face as the wound began to heal. She insisted on helping around the house as much as she could, despite Dawson's protests that she should rest. I need to do something, she said on the 4th day, carefully sweeping the floor while Dawson washed dishes. Sitting in bed all day makes me think too much, and thinking too much leads me down dark paths." "What kind of dark paths?" Dawson asked, glancing over his shoulder at her. Amelia was quiet for a moment, her hands stilling on the broom. "Wondering if I am being selfish. If I should go back and try harder, if maybe I really was the problem and I just could not see it." Dawson dried his hands and turned to face her fully. "Do you think you deserve to be stabbed? No, but you think you deserve to be hit, to be controlled, to be afraid in your own home?" "No," Amelia said more firmly. "Then you are not being selfish and you were not the problem." Dawson crossed his arms. "A marriage should be a partnership between equals, not one person having power over another. What your husband did to you was not marriage. It was captivity." Tears welled up in Amelia's eyes and she quickly looked away, using her sleeve to wipe them. "I keep waiting to feel free, but mostly I just feel guilty and scared." "That is normal," Dawson said gently. "Freedom is not always easy, especially when someone has spent years making you believe you do not deserve it. But you do deserve it, Amelia. You deserve to live without fear, to make your own choices, to be treated with respect." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something shifted in the air between them. Dawson felt it like a physical thing, a pull in his chest that made him suddenly aware of how close they were standing, of the way the morning light caught in her dark hair, of the vulnerability and strength mixed together in her expression. He stepped back, clearing his throat. "You should rest that side. Doctor would have my hide if he knew I was letting you do housework while stitched up." "We did not get a doctor," Amelia pointed out, but she set the broom aside and moved to sit at the table, figure of speech. Dawson poured them both more coffee and joined her. "Tell me about Philadelphia. What was your life like before Colorado?" Amelia cradled her cup in both hands, a slight smile touching her lips. "Crowded, busy. I worked in my father's bookkeeping office before I married. He never wanted me to, said it was not proper for a woman, but we needed the help and I was good with numbers. I liked it actually, liked the order of it, the way everything had to balance in the end. You miss it, sometimes. Not my father's constant disapproval, but the work itself. I liked feeling useful, feeling like I was good at something." She took a sip of coffee. "What about you? Have you always lived in Colorado, born in Kansas, moved here when I was 15 after my mother died? Worked on cattle drives for a few years, saved up enough to buy this land when I was 21. Been here ever since. You never wanted to get married, have a family." Dawson was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "I thought about it. But I have seen too many bad marriages and not enough good ones. Figured I would rather be alone than stuck in something miserable. And then the years passed, and here I am at 32, still alone but not particularly lonely." "That is a rare thing," Amelia said. "Most people cannot stand to be by themselves." "I have got the horses for company," Dawson said with a slight smile. "They are better conversationalists than most people. They do not lie, they do not play games, and they let you know exactly where you stand with them." Amelia laughed, and the sound surprised both of them. It was the first time Dawson had heard her laugh, and he found himself wanting to hear it again. Over the following days they talked more. Amelia told him about growing up in Philadelphia, about her two sisters who had made advantageous marriages to men they barely knew, about her mother who had taught her that a woman's value lay in silence and obedience. Dawson told her about learning to work with horses, about the cattle drives that had taken him from Kansas to Montana and everywhere in between, about the simple satisfaction of working with his hands and seeing tangible results. By the end of the first week, Amelia was moving more easily, the pain from her wound settling into a manageable ache. She insisted on taking over cooking duties, claiming she needed to earn her keep despite Dawson's repeated assurances that she owed him nothing. He came in from working with the horses one afternoon to find her making bread, flour dusting her hands and a look of concentration on her face. "Smells good," he said, washing up at the basin. "We will see if it tastes good," Amelia said. "I am a decent cook, but not an exceptional one." Victor used to complain about it constantly. "I have been cooking for myself for 10 years. Anything I do not have to cook is automatically exceptional." She smiled at that, shaping the dough into loaves. "Dawson, can I ask you something?" "Sure. You said you have helped women leave before." "How many?" Dawson leaned against the counter, thinking. "6, counting you. Mary Patterson was the first about 5 years ago. Her husband was the local blacksmith, had a temper like a wildfire. She came to me because I was buying horseshoes from him, and she had seen me stand up to him when he tried to shortchange me. Figured if I was not afraid of him, maybe I would help her." "Did you?" "Helped her get to her sister's place in Utah. Gave her money for the train and made sure she got on it safely." He paused. "Her husband came after me, accused me of stealing his property. I told him if he came on my land again, he would not leave it. What happened?" He tried once. "I shot his horse out from under him and told him the next bullet would not miss the rider. He left town after that, and good riddance." Amelia was quiet, placing the loaves in the oven. When she turned back to him, her expression was serious. "You are either very brave or very foolish." "Probably a bit of both," Dawson admitted. "But I sleep fine at night knowing I did the right thing." The bread turned out well, and they ate it with butter and honey, sitting at the table as the sun set outside. Dawson found himself watching Amelia more and more, noticing small things like the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, or how she always made sure to thank him for even the smallest gestures. There was a warmth growing in his chest when he was around her, something he had not felt in years, if ever. He tried to ignore it, reminding himself that she was vulnerable, recovering from trauma and trusting him to keep her safe. The last thing she needed was for him to develop feelings that might make her uncomfortable. But ignoring it was becoming harder with each passing day, each shared meal, each quiet conversation in the evening. On the 10th day, Victor Keller came to the ranch. Dawson was repairing a section of fence when he saw the rider approaching. He recognized the man from the description the sheriff had given him, tall and well-dressed, riding an expensive horse with silver trim on the saddle. Dawson carefully set down his tools and checked his revolver, making sure it was loaded and loose in its holster. Amelia was in the house, and he had made her promise to stay hidden if anyone came looking. He could only hope she was keeping that promise now. Victor Keller reined in his horse 20 feet from where Dawson stood, looking down at him with cold eyes that assessed everything in a glance. "You must be Dawson Xavier." "I am." Dawson kept his voice neutral. "Can I help you with something? I am looking for my wife. I have reason to believe she might be here." Victor's voice was cultured, educated, the kind of voice that was used to being obeyed. "Why would you think that?" "Because you have a reputation, Mr. Xavier. A reputation for interfering in matters that do not concern you." Victor dismounted, and Dawson noted the gun at his hip, the expensive revolver of a man who probably barely knew how to use it. "I know you have helped other women run away from their lawful husbands. I am here to tell you that if you are harboring my wife, you will regret it." "That a threat?" Dawson asked, his hand hovering near his own gun. "It is a promise." Victor took a step forward. "Amelia is my property under the law. If you are hiding her, you are guilty of theft, and I will see you prosecuted to the fullest extent." "A woman is not property," Dawson said, his voice hardening. "And if she ran from you, she had good reason." Victor's face flushed with anger. "You know nothing about my marriage or my wife. She is unstable, prone to hysterics. She hurt herself during one of her episodes and then blamed me for it. I'm trying to find her so I can get her the help she needs." "That is a creative story," Dawson said. "Does not explain the knife wound in her side that looks an awful lot like someone tried to stab her." Victor's expression flickered, just for a moment, and Dawson knew he had confirmed what the man suspected. "So she is here." "I did not say that." "You did not have to." Victor's hand moved toward his gun, and Dawson's moved faster, his revolver clearing leather and pointing at Victor's chest before the other man had his weapon halfway drawn. "I would not if I were you," Dawson said quietly. "I have been handling guns since I was 10 years old. You pull that weapon and you will be dead before you get a shot off." Victor froze, his hand still on his gun. "You would murder me." "Self-defense is not murder. You drew first." Dawson kept his gun steady. "Here is what is going to happen. You are going to get back on your horse and ride away. You are not going to come back here. You are not going to send men here. You are going to forget all about Amelia Keller and move on with your life." "She is my wife," Victor said through gritted teeth. "I have a right to her." "You lost any rights you might have had when you put a knife in her side." Dawson took a step forward, his gun never wavering. "She does not want you. She is afraid of you, and I will die before I let you take her back to a life where she is beaten and terrorized." "You are making a mistake," Victor said, but he was backing toward his horse now, his eyes on Dawson's gun. "I have friends, powerful friends. I will make your life hell. You are welcome to try. But understand this, Keller. If anything happens to me, I have got friends too, and they know exactly where to find you. You want to start a war over a woman who does not want you, that is your choice. But you will not win it." Victor mounted his horse, his face twisted with rage. "This is not over." "Yes, it is." Dawson kept his gun trained on Victor until the man had turned his horse and ridden out of sight. Only then did he lower the weapon, his hand trembling slightly from the adrenaline coursing through his system. He turned back to the house and found Amelia standing in the doorway, her face pale, one hand pressed against her side where her wound was. "You should not be up," he said, holstering his gun and moving toward her. "I heard everything," she said, her voice shaking. "Dawson, I am so sorry. I have brought nothing but trouble to your door. You have not brought anything I could not handle." He guided her back inside and helped her sit down. "He is gone, and he is not coming back. You do not know that. You do not know Victor. He does not give up. Neither do I." Dawson knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. They were ice cold despite the warm day. "Listen to me, Amelia. I meant what I said out there. I will not let him take you. I will not let him hurt you. Whatever it takes, you are safe here." Amelia looked at him, her green eyes swimming with tears. "Why are you doing this? I am nothing to you, a stranger who stumbled into your life and brought danger with her." "You are not nothing," Dawson said, and he realized as he said it that it was true. She was not nothing to him. Somewhere over the past 10 days, she had become something much more. "You are a person who deserves to be safe and free, and you are my friend. I do not abandon my friends." "Friend," Amelia repeated softly, and something in her expression shifted, became more complex. "Is that what we are?" Dawson became suddenly aware of how close they were, of his hand still holding hers, of the way she was looking at him. He should pull back, should put distance between them, should not complicate an already complicated situation. But he found he could not move, could not look away from her eyes. "I do not know," he said honestly. "I know I think about you constantly. I know I enjoy every conversation we have. I know that the idea of anything happening to you makes me feel like someone is squeezing my chest in a vice. But you have just escaped a terrible marriage, and the last thing you need is me putting pressure on you or making you uncomfortable." "You do not make me uncomfortable," Amelia said quietly. You make me feel safe. You make me feel seen. You make me feel like maybe I am worth something after all." She squeezed his hands. "And I think about you too. More than I should, probably. More than is wise given everything that is happening." They looked at each other in the quiet of the house, and Dawson felt the world narrow down to just the two of them, to this moment, to the possibility hanging in the air between them. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was soft, tentative, a question more than a statement. Amelia's hands tightened on his, and she kissed him back, her lips warm and sweet against his. It lasted only a moment before Dawson pulled back, searching her face for any sign of regret or fear. "I am sorry," he started to say, but Amelia shook her head. "Do not apologize. I wanted you to kiss me. I have wanted it for days now, but I was afraid to admit it, afraid it would make me weak or foolish or too dependent on you." "None of those things," Dawson said, reaching up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "But we should take this slow. You need time to heal, to figure out who you are outside of being Victor's wife. I do not want you to feel like you owe me anything or like you have to have feelings for me just because I helped you." "That is not why I have feelings for you," Amelia said firmly. "I have feelings for you because you are kind and brave and honest. Because you treat me like an equal, not like property or a burden. Because you make me laugh and make me feel like maybe the future does not have to be scary." Dawson smiled, feeling warmth spread through his chest. "I have feelings for you because you are strong and smart and funny. Because you survived something terrible and came out the other side still fighting. Because you make my house feel like a home instead of just a place to sleep." They sat there for a long moment, hands entwined, and Dawson felt something he had not felt in years, maybe ever. Hope. The possibility of something good, something real, something worth fighting for. But first, they had to deal with Victor Keller and the very real danger he represented. The next morning, Dawson saddled his horse and rode into Manassas. He needed to talk to the sheriff, to see if there was any legal recourse that might protect Amelia. The town was quiet in the early morning, just starting to wake up as merchants opened their shops, and the few ranchers who lived close enough to town ran their errands. He found Sheriff Bradley in his office, drinking coffee and looking over wanted posters. "Dawson," the sheriff said, looking up, "figured I might be seeing you again soon." "Victor Keller came to my ranch yesterday," Dawson said without preamble. "He is looking for his wife." "I know. He filed a formal complaint saying you were harboring her against her will." Bradley set down his coffee cup. "I am supposed to go out there with a warrant to search your property." "Are you going to?" "Do I want to?" "No." "Do I have a choice if he pushes it?" "Also no." The sheriff sighed. "Look, Dawson, I know you are trying to do the right thing, but legally, Amelia Keller is still Victor's wife. Unless she is willing to come forward and testify to abuse, there is not much I can do to protect her." "He stabbed her," Dawson said flatly. "That should be enough." "It would be if she would testify. But would she? Because if she does and it goes to trial, it will be her word against his. And he has money and connections, and she is just a woman who ran away from her husband. Most judges would not even hear the case." Dawson felt frustration burn in his chest. "So what? We just let him keep terrorizing her. Let him take her back so he can finish what he started." "I am not saying that." Bradley stood and walked to the window, looking out at the street. "I am saying you need to be smart about this. If Amelia wants to be free of him, really free, she needs to disappear. Go somewhere he cannot find her, start over completely, and you need to stop making yourself a target. I am not afraid of Victor Keller. You should be. Not because he is dangerous himself, but because he has hired men who are." The sheriff turned back to Dawson. "Word is he brought in 3 guns from Denver, professional troublemakers who will not balk at killing if that is what he pays them to do. Dawson felt cold understanding wash over him. He is planning to come after me. He is planning to do whatever it takes to get his wife back, and you are standing in his way. Bradley moved back to his desk. I cannot protect you if you are not within town limits, Dawson. And I cannot stop men from riding out to your place if they claim they are just visiting. So you are warning me. I am warning you. The sheriff met his eyes. Get Amelia out of here. Take her somewhere safe, somewhere Victor cannot follow. Do it soon, before those hired guns show up, and this turns into something none of us can walk away from. Dawson nodded slowly. Thanks for the warning, Tom. Just do not make me regret it. Dawson rode back to the ranch faster than he had come, his mind racing through possibilities. Denver was the obvious choice, but it was also the first place Victor would look. Maybe further north, to Cheyenne or beyond. Or west, to one of the mining towns in the mountains where people did not ask too many questions about newcomers. When he got back to the ranch, he found Amelia outside, sitting on the porch step in the morning sun. She looked up as he approached, shading her eyes with one hand. That was a quick trip to town. We need to leave, Dawson said, dismounting. Soon, maybe today. Amelia's expression shifted from relaxed to worried in an instant. What happened? He told her about the conversation with the sheriff, about the hired guns, about the warrant. She listened quietly, her hands folded in her lap, her face growing paler with each word. I am sorry, she said when he finished. I have made you a target. No, Victor made me a target by being a violent man who cannot accept that his wife left him. Dawson sat down beside her on the step. But the sheriff is right. We need to get you somewhere safe, somewhere Victor cannot reach you. Where? Amelia asked. I have no money, no skills that would help me survive on my own. Even if we get me to Denver or somewhere else, what then? I work as a maid or a cook until Victor eventually finds me. Spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. You could come with me, Dawson heard himself say, and then he stopped, surprised by his own words. But as soon as he said them, he knew they were right. I could sell this place and we could go north. Montana, maybe, or Wyoming. Buy land somewhere remote, start over. Together. Amelia turned to look at him, her eyes wide. Dawson, you are talking about giving up everything you have built here, your home, your reputation, your life, for someone you have known less than 2 weeks. I am talking about choosing to build something new with someone who matters to me, Dawson said. This land, this ranch, it is just property. It can be sold and replaced, but you cannot be replaced, Amelia. And if staying here means putting you in danger or letting Victor take you back, then this place is not worth keeping. Tears spilled down Amelia's cheeks and she reached for his hand. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you are brave and kind. I know you laugh at my bad jokes and you make the best bread I have ever tasted. I know that when I am with you, I feel more alive than I have in years. He squeezed her hand. I know it is fast, and I know it is complicated. But sometimes you just know when something is right, even if it does not make logical sense. I feel it too, Amelia whispered. I feel like I have been waiting my whole life to meet someone who sees me as a person, not just as an obligation or a possession. But I do not want you to sacrifice everything for me. What if you regret it later? What if you wake up one day and resent me for taking you away from your home? Then we will deal with it together. Dawson reached up and cupped her face with his free hand, wiping away her tears with his thumb. I am not saying this will be easy. I am not saying there will not be hard days and doubts and struggles. But I would rather face all of that with you than face an easy, empty life without you. Amelia leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. When she opened them again, there was determination mixed with the tears. Yes, 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 I will come with you. Yes, I want to start over somewhere new. Yes, I want to build a life with you. She laughed, the sound breaking slightly. Yes to all of it, even though it is crazy and impulsive and nothing like anything I have ever done before. Dawson pulled her into his arms, carefully mindful of her healing wound, and held her close. She wrapped her arms around him and buried her face in his shoulder, and they stayed like that for a long moment, two people holding on to each other against an uncertain future. "We should start packing," Dawson said finally, reluctantly pulling back. "I will need to make arrangements to sell the horses and the land. That will take a few days, but we should be ready to leave as soon as it is done. What about the hired guns? We will have to be careful. I will talk to some of the neighboring ranchers, see if anyone is willing to keep an eye on the place while I am in town making arrangements. And you will stay inside, out of sight." They spent the rest of the day preparing. Dawson made lists of everything that needed to be done, every item that needed to be packed or sold. Amelia went through his limited wardrobe, mending tears and missing buttons, making sure everything was in good repair for the journey ahead. That evening, they sat together at the table, eating a simple dinner and talking about where they might go. Dawson described Montana, the vast open ranges and snow-capped mountains, the way the sky seemed bigger there than anywhere else. Amelia talked about wanting to see the ocean someday, about maybe eventually making their way west to California. "We have time," Dawson said. "We can go anywhere, do anything. We will have a whole new life ahead of us." "Together," Amelia added, reaching across the table to take his hand. "Together," Dawson agreed. The next 3 days were a blur of activity. Dawson rode into town each day, avoiding Victor Keller but making arrangements with a land agent to sell his property. The horses were easier, sold quickly to neighboring ranchers who knew Dawson's reputation for training quality animals. He kept only his best riding horse and bought a second mount for Amelia, a gentle mare that would carry her safely over long distances. He also bought a wagon and supplies for the journey. Food, blankets, ammunition, tools, everything they would need for several weeks of travel. He paid cash for everything, not wanting to leave a paper trail that Victor could follow. On the evening of the 3rd day, Dawson returned to the ranch to find Amelia standing on the porch, her face pale and her eyes fixed on something in the distance. He followed her gaze and saw 3 riders on a hill about a mile away, silhouetted against the setting sun. "They have been there for an hour," Amelia said quietly, "just watching." Dawson felt his jaw tighten. The hired guns had arrived. "Get inside. Pack everything you absolutely need, nothing more. We are leaving tonight. But the sale of the property is not final yet. I do not care. We cannot wait any longer." He helped her inside and then began loading the wagon with their supplies, working quickly in the fading light. The riders on the hill did not move, just watched, and that worried Dawson more than if they had attacked outright. They were waiting for something, maybe for darkness, maybe for orders from Victor. By the time full dark had fallen, the wagon was loaded and the horses were saddled. Dawson went through the house one last time, making sure they had not forgotten anything essential. His eyes fell on the bed where Amelia had recovered, on the table where they had shared so many meals and conversations. He was giving up this life, this home he had built from nothing, and he felt a pang of loss. But then Amelia appeared beside him, and the pang faded. This building was just wood and nails. Home was the person standing next to him, the future they were going to build together. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," she confirmed. They slipped out the back door, avoiding the front where the riders would be watching. Dawson helped Amelia onto her horse, making sure she was secure before mounting his own. The wagon was tied to his horse's saddle, and they moved slowly at first, keeping quiet, using the darkness and the lay of the land to put distance between themselves and the watchers. They had gone about 3 miles when Dawson heard the sound of hoofbeats behind them. He glanced back and saw torches in the distance, coming fast. "They found out we left," he said. "We need to move faster." "The wagon will slow us down," Amelia said. "We need the supplies." Dawson urged his horse into a trot, then a canter, the wagon bouncing along behind them. Amelia kept pace on her mare, both of them riding hard through the darkness. The chase continued for what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes. The riders behind them were gaining, their horses fresher and unburdened by a wagon. Dawson made a quick decision, veering off the main road and heading toward a line of trees he knew marked the beginning of rougher terrain. If they could reach it, they might be able to lose their pursuers in the darkness and the uneven ground. They crashed into the trees, branches whipping at their faces and clothes. The wagon caught on something and jerked to a stop, nearly pulling Dawson from his horse. He quickly untied it, abandoning it there with most of their supplies. There was no choice, no time. "Stay close to me," he called to Amelia, and they pushed deeper into the trees, their horses picking their way carefully over rocks and fallen logs. Behind them, Dawson could hear shouting, the hired guns having reached the trees and now searching for them. He led Amelia to a small clearing he remembered from years ago, a place where a rock overhang created a natural shelter. They dismounted and led the horses under the overhang, pressing themselves back against the stone and holding the horses' noses to keep them from whinnying. The sounds of pursuit came closer, torchlight flickering through the trees. Dawson drew his revolver, preparing for the worst. Amelia pressed close to his side, her breathing quick and shallow. 2 of the hired guns passed within 20 feet of their hiding spot, their voices carrying in the night air. "Lost them in these damn trees," one said. "Keller is not going to be happy," the other replied. "He wanted the woman alive and the man dead. We will find them. They cannot have gone far, not with her still healing from that wound." The voices faded as the men moved on, still searching. Dawson and Amelia stayed frozen in place for another hour, listening as the search gradually moved away from them. Finally, when all had been quiet for a long time, Dawson allowed himself to breathe normally again. "We have to keep moving," he whispered to Amelia. "They will be back at first light to search more thoroughly." "Where do we go?" she whispered back. "There is a small town about 20 miles north of here, called Alamosa. We can catch a train there, head north into Wyoming. It will be faster than riding and harder for them to track us." They led their horses quietly out of the clearing and began the long trek north, staying off roads and moving through the darkness as quickly as they dared. Amelia was exhausted, Dawson could tell, but she never complained, never asked to stop. She just kept moving, one foot in front of the other, trusting him to get them to safety. Dawn was breaking when they finally saw the buildings of Alamosa in the distance. They had made it. Dawson felt relief wash over him, but he did not let his guard down. They were not safe yet. They sold their horses to a livery stable in town, taking less money than they were worth, but not having time to negotiate. Then they went directly to the train station, buying 2 tickets on the next train north. It was not leaving for another 3 hours, and those 3 hours felt like the longest of Dawson's life. They waited in a small restaurant near the station, drinking coffee and trying to look like normal travelers, not 2 people fleeing for their lives. Dawson kept watch out the window, his hand never far from his gun. Every time someone walked past, he tensed, expecting to see Victor or his hired men, but they did not come. By the time the train whistle sounded, announcing the departure, Dawson allowed himself to hope that maybe they had actually escaped. They boarded the train and found seats in the back of a passenger car. As the train pulled away from the station, Amelia leaned against Dawson's shoulder, her eyes closing with exhaustion. He wrapped his arm around her, holding her close, and watched through the window as Alamosa and Colorado disappeared behind them. They were free. The train journey north took 2 days, with stops in various towns along the way. Dawson and Amelia kept to themselves, speaking little to other passengers, always watchful for any sign of pursuit. But as the miles passed, and no one came after them, they began to relax, began to believe they had truly escaped Victor's reach. They got off the train in Cheyenne, Wyoming, a bustling town full of cattlemen and railroad workers and people passing through on their way to somewhere else. It was the kind of place where 2 newcomers would not attract much attention, where people minded their own business and did not ask too many questions. Dawson used some of their remaining money to rent a small room in a boarding house on the edge of town. It was nothing fancy, just a bed and a washstand and a single window that looked out on a dusty street, but it felt like a palace after 2 days on the train and a harrowing night fleeing through the woods. "What now?" Amelia asked, sitting down on the bed with a tired sigh. "Now we rest, and then we figure out our next steps." Dawson sat beside her, taking her hand. "I can find work here easily enough. Ranch work, breaking horses, whatever needs doing. We will save up some money and then we will decide where we want to settle more permanently." "You make it sound so simple," Amelia said, but she was smiling. "Maybe it can be. Maybe after everything we have been through, we deserve something simple for a while." Amelia leaned her head on his shoulder. "I never thought I would be here. 2 weeks ago I was bleeding in the dirt, convinced I was going to die. And now I am in Wyoming, starting a new life with a man I never expected to meet. It feels like a dream." "If it is a dream, I do not want to wake up," Dawson said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. They stayed in Cheyenne for 3 weeks, long enough for Amelia's wound to fully heal and for Dawson to find steady work at a large ranch outside of town. The owner was impressed with Dawson's skill with horses and offered him a permanent position as head wrangler, with the possibility of buying into a partnership in the future. It was a good offer, but Dawson was hesitant to settle so close to Colorado. He talked it over with Amelia, and they decided to keep moving north into Montana, where they could find their own land and build something that was truly theirs. The day before they were set to leave, Dawson took Amelia into town to buy supplies for the journey. They were walking past a small church when she stopped suddenly, her hand tightening on his arm. "What is it?" he asked, looking around for danger. "I want to get married," Amelia said, looking up at him. "Before we leave, before we start our new life, I want to marry you. Not because I am running from Victor, not because I feel obligated to you for helping me, but because I love you and I want to be your wife." Dawson felt his heart swell in his chest. "You love me." "I love you," Amelia confirmed, her green eyes bright. "I think I started falling in love with you the moment you picked me up off that road and told me I was safe. And every day since then, I have fallen more in love with who you are, with your kindness and your strength, and your unwavering belief that people deserve to be treated with respect." "I love you too," Dawson said, pulling her close. "I have loved you from the moment you laughed at my bad cooking and then showed me how to make bread properly. I love your courage and your resilience and the way you see the best in people even after everything you have been through." They kissed there on the street, not caring who saw them, and then they went into the church together. The minister was an elderly man who listened to their story without judgment and agreed to marry them that very afternoon. He even produced 2 witnesses, his wife and the church organist, who stood with them as Dawson and Amelia spoke their vows. I, Dawson Xavier, take you, Amelia Keller, to be my lawfully wedded wife, Dawson said, his voice steady and clear. I promise to love you, to honor you, to protect you, and to stand beside you through whatever life brings us. You are my partner, my equal, and my heart. I will never try to control you or diminish you. I will always respect your choices and support your dreams. This I vow before God and these witnesses. Amelia's eyes were wet with tears as she spoke her own vows. I, Amelia Keller, take you, Dawson Xavier, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, to trust you, to build a life with you based on respect and partnership. You showed me what it means to be valued, to be safe, to be loved without conditions. I will stand beside you through every challenge and celebrate every joy. You are my home, my future, and my heart. This I vow before God and these witnesses. The minister pronounced them husband and wife, and Dawson kissed his bride with a fierce joy that took his breath away. They were married. They were together. They were free. The witnesses congratulated them, and the minister's wife produced a simple wedding cake she had baked that morning for another occasion, but insisted they have for their celebration. They ate cake in the small church kitchen, and Dawson felt a happiness so pure and complete that he wanted to hold onto the moment forever. That night, in their small room at the boarding house, Dawson and Amelia consummated their marriage with a tenderness and passion that spoke of everything they had been through together, everything they had survived. Afterward, lying in each other's arms in the darkness, Amelia traced patterns on Dawson's chest and spoke softly. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For seeing me as a person worth saving, for risking everything to keep me safe, for loving me even when I was broken and afraid." She propped herself up on one elbow to look at him in the moonlight streaming through the window. "You gave me back my life, Dawson. You gave me a future I never thought I could have. You gave me something too," Dawson said, reaching up to tuck her hair behind her ear. "You gave me a reason to believe in love, in partnership, in the possibility of building something good with another person. Before you, I was content to be alone. Now I cannot imagine my life without you in it." They kissed again, slow and sweet, and then fell asleep wrapped around each other, secure in their love and their shared future. The next morning they left Cheyenne and headed north into Montana. The journey took them through some of the most beautiful country Dawson had ever seen: vast prairies and rolling hills, rivers that ran clear and cold from mountain snowmelt, forests thick with pine and aspen. Amelia marveled at all of it, having never been this far west or seen such wild, open spaces. They traveled slowly, stopping in towns along the way to work for a few days or weeks, building up their savings. Dawson found work easily, his reputation as a skilled horseman preceding him thanks to letters of recommendation from ranchers he had worked with over the years. Amelia found work too, taking in laundry or cooking for boarding houses, proving to be as competent and hardworking as Dawson had always known she was. By the time they reached central Montana in the fall of 1882, they had enough money saved to buy a small piece of land near the town of White Sulphur Springs. It was not much, just 160 acres with a creek running through it and good grazing for cattle or horses, but it was theirs. They filed the paperwork, paid the fee, and became landowners. The first winter was hard. They lived in a tent while Dawson built a small cabin, working from dawn until dusk to get it finished before the worst of the winter weather set in. Amelia helped as much as she could, hauling water and gathering rocks for the fireplace and cooking meals over an open fire. There were days when they were cold and exhausted and questioned whether they had made the right choice. But then Dawson would look at Amelia, at her determined face and capable hands, and he would remember why they were doing this. They were building a life together, a life based on freedom and love and mutual respect. That was worth any amount of hardship. By the time spring came, the cabin was finished, small but sturdy, with a good fireplace and a solid roof. They planted a garden, and Dawson used more of their savings to buy a few cattle and 3 horses he could train and sell. Amelia proved to have a knack for raising chickens, and soon they had fresh eggs every morning. Life settled into a rhythm, hard work balanced with quiet evenings spent together, talking about their days and their dreams. Dawson had never been happier. Every morning he woke up beside Amelia, and every night he fell asleep with her in his arms, and it felt like a miracle that he got to live this life. In the summer of 1883, Amelia told him she was pregnant. Dawson was mending a fence when she came walking across the field toward him, a strange expression on her face. He set down his tools and met her halfway, concerned. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong," Amelia said, taking his hands. "Something is very, very right. We are going to have a baby." Dawson felt like all the air had been knocked out of his lungs. "A baby, a baby," Amelia confirmed, laughing at his stunned expression. "You are going to be a father, Dawson Xavier." He picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing, and then he set her down carefully, suddenly afraid he had been too rough. "Are you all right? Is the baby all right? Should you be walking all the way out here?" "I am fine, and the baby is fine, and yes, I can still walk," Amelia said, touching his face gently. "I am pregnant, not fragile. I know, Dawson trailed off, overwhelmed with emotion. "We are going to have a baby." "We are going to have a baby," Amelia repeated, and they held each other in the middle of the field. 2 people who had found each other against all odds and were now creating a new life together. The pregnancy was not easy. Amelia was sick for the first few months, and the isolation of their ranch meant they were far from a doctor. But Dawson was attentive and careful, and Amelia was strong. By the time winter came again, she was healthier, her belly round with their growing child. On a cold February night in 1884, with snow falling outside and the fire burning bright in the fireplace, Amelia went into labor. Dawson had ridden into town days earlier and convinced the local midwife to come stay with them for a week, just in case, and now he was grateful for his foresight. The labor lasted through the night and into the next morning. Dawson paced outside in the snow, too anxious to stay still, too afraid to be far from the cabin. Every time Amelia cried out, he flinched, wishing he could take the pain for her. Finally, as the sun was rising, he heard a new sound. A baby crying. Dawson rushed into the cabin to find the midwife cleaning a tiny, red-faced infant while Amelia lay exhausted but smiling on the bed. "You have a son," the midwife said, handing the baby to him. Dawson took his son with trembling hands, looking down at the impossibly small person in his arms. The baby had stopped crying and was looking up at him with dark, unfocused eyes. Dawson felt his heart crack open with a love so fierce and immediate it almost hurt. "He is perfect," he said, carrying the baby over to Amelia. "You did so well, my love. He is absolutely perfect." Amelia reached up to touch the baby's face with one finger. "We made a person," she said in wonder. "We made this perfect little person together." They named him Daniel, after Dawson's father who had died when Dawson was young, and he grew quickly, a strong and healthy baby who filled their small cabin with laughter and life. Dawson had never known love like this existed, the fierce protective love for his son combined with the deep, abiding love for his wife. 2 years later, they had a daughter, bright-eyed and stubborn from the moment she was born. They named her Sarah, and she completed their family in a way Dawson had not known they needed. The years passed in a blur of hard work and happiness. Their ranch grew slowly but steadily. Dawson became known throughout the region as an excellent horse trainer, and people came from as far as Bozeman and Helena to buy horses from him. Amelia kept the books and managed the household with the same competence she brought to everything she did. They were partners in every sense of the word, building their life together day by day. Sometimes, late at night after the children were asleep, Dawson and Amelia would sit together on the porch of their cabin, now expanded and improved over the years, and talk about how far they had come. They never heard from Victor Keller again, never knew what became of him or if he had ever stopped looking for Amelia. But as time passed, the fear faded, replaced by the certainty that they were safe, that they had truly escaped and built something new. In the summer of 1895, Daniel was 11 years old and Sarah was 9. They were helping with the ranch now, learning to ride and rope and care for the animals. Dawson watched them sometimes and marveled at how different their childhoods were from his own, how they grew up knowing they were loved and valued, never afraid, never uncertain of their place in the world. One evening, as Dawson and Amelia sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, Amelia leaned her head on his shoulder and sighed contentedly. "What are you thinking about?" Dawson asked, putting his arm around her. "Just how lucky I am," Amelia said. "How lucky we are. Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life, that I get to wake up every morning beside you, that I get to watch our children grow up in a home full of love and safety." "I feel the same way," Dawson said. "Every single day, I feel grateful that I found you on that road, that I got to be the one to help you, to love you, to build this life with you." "You did more than help me," Amelia said, turning to look at him. "You saved me. Not just from Victor, but from a future where I would have believed I was worth nothing, where I would have thought that was all I deserved. You showed me what real love looks like, what a real partnership can be. You gave me everything." "You gave me everything too," Dawson said, kissing her softly. "You gave me a family, a home, a purpose. You made me believe that good things can come from bad situations, that love can grow even in the darkest times." They sat together in the fading light, two people who had found each other when they both needed it most, who had fought for their love and their freedom, who had built something beautiful and lasting. Inside the cabin, they could hear Daniel and Sarah arguing about something, their voices loud but not angry, just the normal sounds of siblings who felt safe enough to be themselves. He had helped women leave before, and the cowboy said every single time that no one should need to ask, Amelia said softly, quoting words Dawson had said to her 13 years earlier. "You lived up to that promise, Dawson, not just with me, but with all those women before me. You saw people in danger and you helped them, no questions asked, no expectation of reward. That is who you are, and it is one of the million reasons I love you." "I just did what was right," Dawson said, "but I will admit I am grateful that doing what was right led me to you. Because you, Amelia Xavier, are the best thing that ever happened to me. And you, Dawson Xavier, are the love of my life." They kissed as the sun disappeared below the horizon, and then they went inside to their children, to their warm home, to the life they had built together through courage and love, and the simple belief that everyone deserves to be safe and free. Years later, when Daniel was grown and working his own piece of land adjacent to theirs, and Sarah had married a good man who treated her with all the respect and love she had learned to expect from watching her parents, Dawson and Amelia would still sit on their porch in the evenings and hold hands and talk about their life together. They never forgot where they came from, never forgot the hard road that had brought them together. But they also never dwelled on it, never let the past overshadow the beautiful present and future they had created. In the winter of 1910, when Dawson was 60 years old and Amelia was 53, they celebrated their 28th wedding anniversary. Their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch house, which had been expanded several times over the years, and now stood as a testament to the life Dawson and Amelia had built together. After the party, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Dawson and Amelia sat by the fireplace, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting on his chest, just as they had done thousands of times before. "You remember that first night?" Amelia asked. "When you brought me here to this very spot and stitched up my wound?" "I remember everything about that night," Dawson said. "I remember thinking you were the bravest person I had ever met, running away from a man who wanted to kill you, determined to survive no matter what. I remember thinking you were either a saint or a fool, offering to help a stranger who brought nothing but trouble," Amelia said with a soft laugh. "Turns out you were neither. You were just a good man who believed in doing the right thing." "I was a lonely man who did not know he was lonely until he met you," Dawson corrected. "You filled a space in my life I did not even know was empty." "We filled that space for each other," Amelia said. "That is what real love is, I think. Two people who are whole on their own but better together." Dawson kissed the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair, feeling the comfortable weight of her against his side. "I would do it all again," he said quietly. "Every hard day, every moment of fear, every sacrifice. I would do it all again in a heartbeat if it meant I got to spend this life with you." "So would I," Amelia agreed. "Even knowing how hard it would be, even knowing all the struggles we would face, I would still choose you. I would always choose you." They sat in the firelight, two people who had beaten the odds, who had turned a chance meeting on a dusty Colorado road into a lifetime of love and partnership. They had weathered storms and celebrated triumphs. They had built a home, raised children, created a legacy of kindness and courage that would outlive them, and through it all, they had never forgotten the truth that had brought them together in the first place. No one should need to ask for help when they are in danger. And love, real love, is not about ownership or control. It is about choice, respect, and the courage to build something better together. As the fire burned low and the night grew quiet around them, Dawson and Amelia Xavier held each other close, grateful for every moment they had been given, for every day they got to spend loving each other, for the beautiful life they had created from ashes and hope, and the unshakable belief that everyone deserves a chance at happiness. Their story, which had begun with blood and fear and a desperate flight for freedom, had become a story of enduring love, of family, of home. And if you asked either of them, even decades later, they would tell you the same thing, that the best decisions are often the hardest ones, that love is worth fighting for, and that sometimes the people who need us most are the ones who never get the chance to ask. But Dawson Xavier had never needed anyone to ask. He had just needed to see someone in need and do the right thing. And in doing so, he had found not just a purpose, but a partner, a love, and a life beyond anything he had ever imagined possible. And they lived happily, surrounded by children and grandchildren, supported by a community that respected them, secure in a love that had been tested by fire and emerged stronger for it. When they were old and gray, sitting on the porch of the home they had built together, they could look back on their lives with satisfaction and forward to whatever came next with peace, because they had each other. They had always had each other, and that, in the end, was everything that mattered. The Montana sky stretched wide above their ranch, the same sky that had watched over them through decades of joy and struggle. The land they had built their life on remained solid beneath their feet. And the love they shared continued to grow, deepening with every passing year, every shared sunset, every quiet moment of contentment. In the summer of 1920, Dawson Xavier passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 70, with Amelia holding his hand. She followed him 2 years later, dying as she had lived with dignity and grace, surrounded by the family they had created together. Their children buried them side by side on a hill overlooking their ranch, with a simple headstone that read, Dawson and Amelia Xavier. Partners in life, united in love, forever together. And on quiet evenings when the wind blew across the Montana prairie and the sun set in shades of gold and pink, Daniel and Sarah would tell their own children and grandchildren the story of how their grandparents met. They would talk about courage and kindness, about standing up for what is right even when it is hard, about the power of love to heal and transform. They would tell the story of a cowboy who helped women leave before, who said every single time that no one should need to ask for help when they were in danger. And they would tell the story of a woman who was brave enough to run, and lucky enough to be found by a man who saw her not as property to be returned, but as a person deserving of respect and freedom. It was a story worth telling, worth remembering, worth passing down through generations. A story of love conquering fear, of partnership overcoming hardship, of two people who found each other when they both needed saving and ended up saving each other. And it was a story that reminded everyone who heard it that the smallest acts of kindness can change everything, that choosing to help someone in need is never the wrong choice, and that real love, the kind that lasts a lifetime and beyond, is built on a foundation of respect, trust, and the unwavering belief that everyone deserves the chance to be free. The Xavier Ranch continued to thrive long after Dawson and Amelia were gone, passed down through their children and their children's children, each generation adding their own chapter to the story while never forgetting the couple who started it all. And somewhere, in the endless expanse of Montana sky, two souls remained together, still holding hands, still watching over the land they had loved and the family they had created, still grateful for that day in June 1882, when a cowboy on a dusty Colorado road made the choice to help a stranger, and in doing so, found his home, his heart, and his forever. This was their legacy, not just the land or the family, but the reminder that doing the right thing matters, that love can flourish even in the hardest circumstances, and that sometimes the best stories begin with someone who refuses to look away when another person needs help. Dawson Xavier had helped women leave before. He had said every single time that no one should need to ask, and when Amelia Keller stumbled into his life, bleeding and afraid, he had lived up to those words. He had helped her without hesitation, without expectation of reward, without question. And in return, she had given him everything. Love, family, purpose, home. It was more than either of them could have dreamed, more than they had dared to hope for. But they had reached for it anyway, had fought for it, had built it together with their own hands and hearts. And that made all the difference.